quick story about my first DNF, did not finish in an ultra marathon. Let me take you to, take you back to about 2022. I think this is when it happened. Kind of blocked it out of my mind. It all kind of runs together after doing this for so many years. I push everyone to be active and to move, and especially to try ultra marathons. If you're a runner, they're life changing. And we are not superhuman. The people who do them are not superhuman. Doing an ultra marathon is within reach of most people who have the mental tenacity to complete one. If you want to do one, I truly believe you can do one. But DNFs are a hugely scary thing, I think, to most people in ultra marathons. You don't want to, you put in so much time, you don't want to not finish them. And there's a lot of money in ultra marathons, a lot of time invested. All of these things kind of play into failure being a huge deterrent to even wanting to try. But the thing about ultra marathons is they don't care about your feelings. They don't care about the money spent. They don't care about the time spent. Those invasive quitting thoughts, the pain, all of those things can kind of creep in through the cracks of your mind as you're going through an ultra marathon. Beginning, it's super exciting. As you get towards the middle, you start to have those thoughts of like, who cares? I could stop now. Everything hurts. I'm dying. All of those things can start to creep in slowly in your mind. How you deal with them is ultimately how you're going to fare in the race. You have to understand that those thoughts are going to come. The pain is going to come. Being uncomfortable is going to come. Wanting to quit multiple times. Those thoughts are going to come. It's how you deal with them. And there are things you can kind of do to help you navigate and mitigate those issues. But let me take you back to Belmonte, I think 2022. That was also my first race I ever completed as an ultramarathon back in, I think, like 2016, 2015. That was my first ultramarathon. It's a double marathon over two mountains. Basically, you go over two mountains and then back over, out and back. Super tough race. Tons of climbing, very remote. And that kind of plays into my story. So the first time I did Belmonte in Virginia, I had family and friends come out. They supported me. Super tough. I mean, I finished probably in the last two people in this race. It just was really difficult. But I did finish. I think out of 80 people, I think only 50 finished. It does have a large percentage of the people who start drop. It's not an easy race. But there's things that you do that can set you up for failure also. And that year, I decided I was on a whim going to go out there and take on Belmonte again. I drive out there. It's a couple hours from where I live. Didn't eat much the night before. So really worried about fueling, how my stomach was going to fare because there's no restrooms on this course. It's very remote. And I just was worried about how my stomach was going to do. I had started using this supplement called UCAN. Still love it, but I was still very new to it. And I had packed my my hydration pack with tons of baggies. It would have been funny if I got pulled over. It's white powder and tons of baggies broken up, portioned up into the portions that I would need to put in my bottle. And I was pretty much thinking I could fuel with this because it says it's got the calories, it's got all that. So you start doing the math, technically it was supposed to work. So the night before, all I had was a bean burrito from Taco Bell. Super great choice. Terrible night's sleep. I probably got about 2.5 hours of sleep the night before. This another brick in the failure wall. This building up. I was completely alone. I had no pacer. I had no one there with me. And again, that was something you think after you've been doing this a long time is not really going to bother you. And it doesn't always bother you, but it depends on the race, how difficult it's going to be when you need someone to kind of help talk you through things. So as I get through the first half of the race, I had been fueling predominantly with this UCAN powder. Technically, it was supposed to work. Energy was not great all day. I felt sluggish from the very beginning. I don't know what it was. It felt like maybe the altitude was bothering me a little bit, but it's not super high out there. I mean, it is for Virginia. I think the highest point's like 4,000 feet out there. Super sluggish. And, with ultra marathons, you don't have to worry about feeling good or feeling bad because it will change eventually. I make it over the first mountain, not great. Over the second mountain, even more not great. And as I'm making my way back up, I started having knee issues, and it started making it hard to climb and hard to descend. My mind started hyper-focusing on that. I was underfueled. I didn't know that I was underfueled at the time. I felt like I was eating enough, but I needed real food. And I've learned that since then. I knew that beforehand. I can't just live off supplements. I have to have real food, real substance to process a lot more calories than I think I'm burning. And in the light of this whole spring energy thing that's going on out there right now, calories do matter. Calories do matter, and trying to supplement them, I know everybody's different, but for me, I cannot completely supplement calories. It can't just all be through gels. They can get by a little bit, but you get behind the eight ball on that, and that makes things worse. So in this race, I was alone, no pacer, terrible night's sleep, poor nutrition the night before, and I was fueling terribly. And because of my experience, I thought I could just make my way through it. I mean, honestly, I don't think of that distance being that hard anymore. It is hard. 50 miles is never easy, but it's not impossible. After you've been doing this for 10 plus years, I've done close to, I think, 25, 26 races. You think you can just push through it because it's mostly mental. Yeah, not the case. Those invasive thoughts started to creep in my brain of, now you're injured. My knee did hurt. It was quite painful. I was having a hard time descending, but my mind, because I felt so horribly through my fueling. Fueling is everything. Fueling is everything in finishing a race. If you do not fuel correctly, it will end your race, more than likely. And anytime I've ever had a very hard time in a race is because I had not taken in enough calories. In this race, I ran the first half of the race probably not even getting a quarter of the calorie intake that I was supposed to have. And it just made me feel very sluggish, very vulnerable to the invasive thoughts. And as I made my way back up the third mountain climb and coming down, I just basically gave in to the pain. I didn't feel great, didn't have enough calories, it just gave in to the pain and ended up dropping at mile 38. How comfortable I felt with that was bothersome to me, because I felt like after all the years of doing this that, if I could quit once, that will make it much easier to quit again. And since then, I think I had another DNF later in a 24-hour race. I started to feel like I started to mentally crumble from that, because I took a lot of pride in not ever quitting, just push through, especially since I finished that as my first ultra marathon, to then be so experienced so many years later and to fail. It made me really feel human, and I know I'm completely human. I'm not an elite ultra runner by any stretch of the means, but I can push. I'm like a tank. I can continue to push. But what I learned in that race is that we're all susceptible to making poor decisions in a race. We all do it. We become complacent. We make dumb decisions. And learning from your mistakes is super important. Learning from other people. It really does. And the funny thing is, I'd made a video about how important pacers and crew are in races, especially in some of these remote races where you're very much alone. That race and this race, I was alone the entire time. Didn't run with anyone else. Didn't talk to anyone else. It was super isolating, super lonely. And that just made it worse throughout the day, to just not have anybody to kind of bounce things off of. And then the first race, I did a video like this many years ago, probably 8 years ago, about how important pacers and crew are in certain races. All races are important, but certain races, they're even more important. Fueling, I've always pushed. I knew these things, and I still made those mistakes. So the lesson here is, don't become complacent. Do the things you know work. Don't try to freestyle and think you can just kind of push through, because those are usually the poor days. Those are the bad days. And since then, I've become even more adamant about following the certain rules I have for races, and it's really helped a lot. And out of everything that I've ever learned in ultra marathons, the number one rule is fueling. A close second would be hydration, but fueling is so important. And if you are planning on doing ultra marathons, or if you've struggled with it, I implore you to look into fueling. Real food, not just relying on supplements, not adding up the calories from the supplements and thinking that's going to work. That may work for some, does not work for me, which means it probably doesn't work for a lot of other people. I'm a bigger runner. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds on average. My body needs real food. So I hope that you can take a little bit of grain of, I was going to say truth, but it is a truth, from this and take that into your next ultra marathon. Fuel, fuel, fuel. Make sure you always fuel and hydrate. And hopefully you'll never have to deal with the experiences of a DNF. Statistically, we all probably are going to. You're going to at some point. It's not the end of the world. It's really not. Nobody cares. You shouldn't care. It's a learning experience. Ultra marathons are about the experience, being around other people, challenging yourself, pushing yourself to do something that's hard, because ultra marathons are hard. They're never easy. And that's why we do them. That's why such a small percentage of people on this earth ever do them. So that's my story for my first DNF. I hope you learned something from it. I got so many more stories I think I'm going to start sharing with you guys over time here. And I hope you have a good day. If you want to see the movie I did from that race where I failed, it's a pretty good one. Pretty good one. You can go ahead and click right here, here, or here. It'll be in the description. It'll also be in the pinned comment below. And you can watch that. It's a pretty good one. You all take care. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.